Let's talk about how to deal with social engineering issues. What exactly is social engineering? Social engineering is an attempt from a malicious person to fraudulently acquire sensitive information. This could include information like usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, perhaps social security numbers, birth dates, or sensitive information about the user's organization. Social engineering is done using a type of masquerading. A person masquerading as a trustworthy person approaches the user and asks them for this information. Because of the way most people are, they usually want to help the person out. There are two general types of social engineering commonly used. Passive social engineering takes advantage of the unintentional actions of others to gather information or to gain access to a secure facility. Active social engineering involves direct interaction with users, asking them to reveal information or take actions. There are many different social engineering techniques. Examples of passive social engineering include the following. Shoulder surfing involves looking over the shoulder of someone working on a computer in an attempt to view usernames, passwords, or account numbers. Eavesdropping refers to an unauthorized person listening to a conversations of employees or other authorized personnel discussing sensitive topics. For eavesdropping and shoulder surfing to work, the attacker typically must have physical access to an organization's facility. We refer to these types of individuals as malicious insiders. Malicious insiders are particularly dangerous. The fact that they are insiders indicates that we have given them a certain degree of trust. They may be employees, repair persons, even a vending machine tech. Because they are allowed inside a facility, they have a much higher degree of access to information than individuals outside, and therefore present a much greater risk. Dumpster diving is the process of looking in the trash for sensitive information that has not been properly disposed of. Piggybacking and tailgating refer to an attacker entering a secured building by following an authorized employee through a secured door and not providing identification. Piggybacking usually implies consent of the authorized employee, whereas tailgating implies no consent of the authorized employee. Active social engineering uses more aggressive techniques. For example, one common approach is the help me scenario. In this scenario, someone approaches the user, usually over the phone is one of the social engineer's favorite tools, to ask the user for help. They say, "My name is Bob. I work in accounting with your company. I'm on the road, I have a big presentation in 15 minutes, and I've got to get a copy of my presentation, but I can't log into the network because I forgot my password. Will you let me have yours just for a few minutes, just so I can get that file?" This approach is sometimes called persuasive social engineering. The end user wants to be a team player and to help out, so they may agree to give the attacker the information. They may also give out the information a little bit out of fear. They don't want to be blamed if the other employee is not able to give their presentation and a sale is lost. However, I can almost guarantee that these types of requests are never legitimate. One employee should never need to use another employee's password to get to his own information. Unfortunately, some end users don't understand that. Another common approach is called the authority figure approach. It can manifest itself in several different ways. For example, the social engineer may impersonate a network administrator. In this scenario, the social engineer will contact a user in your organization and say something to the effect of, "Hi, this is Mary. I'm the network administrator for your organization. There's a problem with your user account. We've got to fix the email server immediately, and I can't do that without your username and password. Please give them to me immediately." The person poses as an authority figure, the network administrator, and tells the end user that they must provide him or her with the information that they requested. Most organizations are so large that they don't know if the social engineer is really a network administrator or not. On the phone, they sound like they are who they say they are. Because the user will tend to defer to the caller's authority, they will be inclined to give the information. End users need to understand that a network administrator never needs the end user's password and username to do anything. Another common tactic is to masquerade as the boss. Most organizations have many layers of management. Using this fact, the social engineer pretends to be a manager or director somewhere up high in the organization chart and directs the attack at a lower level employee. The attacker might say something like, "I am a vice president and I need to get at my presentation files. If I can't give my presentation, there's going to be a problem. I need to use your username and password immediately, and trust me, you don't want me to miss this presentation. The target of the attack is likely to give that information, even if he or she doesn't recognize the name given by the social engineer. They don't want to get fired. Another very successful social engineering attack that is executed far more frequently is called a phishing attack. In a phishing attack, the social engineer masquerades as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. For example, the attacker might send out a mass email that looks like it came from your bank, from PayPal, Amazon, or eBay. Most likely, the attacker even copied graphics and text directly from one of these sites to make the email look completely legitimate. The goal is to trick the recipient into revealing user names, passwords, bank account numbers, credit card numbers, or some other sensitive information. The message most likely will say something like, "We have reason to believe that an unauthorized person has tried to access your account. Please click the link below to verify your account information and review your recent transactions." Now, if you were to click on this link, it brings up a page that looks like a legitimate web page for the organization that supposedly sent the email. You are then asked to put in your username and password, account number, or some other sensitive piece of information. However, when you hit the submit button, the information goes to the person who sent the email, not to the institution. Unfortunately, this approach is very easy to execute and extremely successful. Many recent large-scale security breaches directed at major retailers and government organizations were orchestrated using simple phishing emails that tricked employees into supplying the attacker with their username and password. There are several variations of the phishing attack that you also need to be familiar with. In spear phishing, attackers gather information about the victim, such as identifying which online banks they use. Then they send phishing emails for the specific bank. Whaling is another form of phishing that is targeted to senior executives and high-profile victims. Phishing is similar to phishing, but instead of an email, the attacker uses voice over IP or VoIP to gain sensitive information. The term is a combination of voice and phishing. The key thing to remember is that the weak link in any security plan is the end user. Because they don't have the same degree of technical experience that you have, they can be tricked with these social engineering techniques. Social engineering is currently very popular because it works extremely well. If you think about it, a good social engineer can go out there and gather tons of information with just a few telephone calls. If you're a hacker and you're trying to exploit your way in through a firewall to get at a network server and break into a password-protected database, it's a lot more difficult than simply calling someone up on the phone and saying, "Hey, what's your username and password?" That's why social engineering is so popular. So you need to teach your users how to respond to social engineering attempts. If you train them properly, the whole social engineering approach starts to fall apart because you make it much more difficult for attackers to accomplish their goal. First of all, teach your users that if somebody calls them and claims to be somebody who needs a username or password, they should forward that call to the help desk. If they do that, the social engineer will most likely hang up. It's much more difficult to trick a trained network administrator than it is an end user because you're in a position to verify the request. This is something that the average end user is not able to do. To protect against phishing, train users to check the actual link destination within the emails to verify that they point to the correct URL and not to a spoofed one. Do not click on links in emails. Users should also be trained in the different types of HTTPS used when going to sites that transmit sensitive information, such as e-commerce or banking sites. Sites secured with a regular certificate will display a lock in the address bar of most browsers. This means that the connection is encrypted using HTTPS, but doesn't necessarily mean the identity of the person running the site is verified. However, sites that display either a green lock or a green bar in the address bar indicates that the site is both secure and the identity of the site has been verified. You can also enable phishing detection within many browsers. To protect against shoulder surfing, you can implement privacy filters on computer and notebook screens. These devices make it difficult to see what is on the screen unless you are directly in front of the device. These are commonly used in banking institutions to prevent account information from being observed by passersby. Users should also be trained to take note of unfamiliar people walking through the work area. To protect against dumpster diving, train users to shred all documents. They should never throw away documents in the common trash. Even seemingly innocuous documents can be used by a social engineer to piece together information about a user or an organization. Regular doors are susceptible to piggybacking and tailgating, where an unauthorized person will ask an authorized person to hold the door for them. Man traps and turnstiles that permit only a single person at a time and require individual authentication are effective deterrents to piggybacking. A man trap is a specialized entrance with two doors that creates a security buffer zone between two areas. Once a person enters into the space between the doors, both doors are locked and authentication information must be provided. If the authentication is not provided, the intruder is kept in the man trap until the authorities arrive. A turnstile is a barrier that permits entry in only one direction. In this lesson, we talked about social engineering. We talked about how it works and some things you can do to prevent social engineers from gaining information from your computer systems or from your network.